Hi, everybody. Welcome back to The Summer I Started a Podcast. I'm Kara. I'm your host, and that song is extremely important for today's episode. So maybe give it another listen if you weren't paying attention to the lyrics, but I'll talk about it a little bit later too. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. I am in the middle of just back to back to back travels. I was in Madison, Wisconsin last weekend for a wedding. That's where I went to school. It was so fun to be back. Go Badgers. And I was so exhausted, and now I'm getting back into the swing of things, but I'm also leaving again today to go hang out with my parents who are visiting, and then next week I'm going to another wedding. So just a lot of things going on here. But I'm happy to be able to squeeze this in, and I just love watching the show and reading the book. It's so great. And I'm so excited because today the chapters that we read actually lined up with what we saw in the show really well. So I'm excited that that finally happened. Before we get into the show, there's just a couple of random things that I want to chat about. So, if you didn't know, I have an email newsletter and a blog, and that was kind of my main focus before I started doing the podcast. And I've talked about this before, but it focuses on more like lifestyle and beauty, heavy emphasis on the beauty, specifically nails. That's sort of my background and my passion, if you will. So I just posted a new blog post today all about my favorite things for fall. So I have like manicures that I want to do this week or this month, fall recipes, books that I'm excited to read, things I'm excited to watch, some like clothes that I recently bought for the season. It's a really good post. So if you're interested, I'm going to have that link in the show notes so you can check out my blog. And if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you can sign up via my website as well. I would love to have you join the newsletter fam. I have been like, you would think that with all the traveling I'm doing that I would have been reading and watching a lot of things, but I feel like I just watch like random things on the plane, and it's not like really helping me make a dent in my list. But I want to just chat about a couple of things that I watched recently. So on the plane, I watched Vanderpump Rules season 10 with like the Scandival season, like the very beginning of it. I haven't watched the entire season. I kind of caught up at the end because some of my friends were super into it, and it was really fun to just like be a part of the discourse. But watching it from the beginning and like knowing what happens in the end of the season is just crazy. So I've been really enjoying that. And I need to keep watching. I think I watched like 5 episodes on the plane. And I also watched Zootopia on the plane, which I had never seen that before. And it was so freaking cute. One of my friends told me I needed to watch it, and I saw it on there. So I was like, oh, perfect opportunity. Obsessed with the Shakira song. It's so good. If you've never seen that, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was about a zoo, but it's actually just about like a big city. It's like New York City, kind of, but they're all animals. And the world building in the movie was adorable. Okay, and then also something that's been on my list to watch is Bridget Jones's Diary. I think I've seen it before a while ago. It's from 2001, I believe. So I've definitely like seen it or seen parts of it, but I've never watched it recently. So I watched it this week. I knew there was like a love triangle, so I was curious what it would be like in relation to The Summer I Turned Pretty. And it is very like The Summer I Turned Pretty coded. I really enjoyed it. The parts of it that sort of reminded me of The Summer I Turned Pretty were like the characters in the love triangle, essentially. So we have Bridget Jones, who's the main character, and she has been like lusting over her boss at work. His name's Daniel Cleaver. He's played by Hugh Grant, a young Hugh Grant, like so handsome. And she's really into him because he's like hot and like just like a really successful person in her industry, and they have like a very flirty physical connection. So that sort of reminds me of like Belly and Jeremiah. Like they're very physical, maybe a little bit more surface level. Whereas the other man in the movie is Mark Darcy, who's played by Colin Firth. And Bridget has known him for a really long time because their moms are friends. And they've kind of always like passed each other. Like they've never really been friends, but you get the sense that Mark has like kept an eye on Bridget like growing up and like knows about her and kind of has like feelings for her that make him feel like resentful about like liking her. And Bridget has like never liked him because I think they had some like bad experiences together growing up. Like he was mean to her or she was embarrassed about something. Honestly, I wasn't paying like the most attention to it. I was like working a little bit, had it on in the background, but this really caught my eye. The part where she is talking to Mark Darcy and he tells her she's like had a lot of embarrassing like moments since they've reconnected as adults. And he tells her that he likes her and has liked her just the way that she is. And Bridget is like very self-conscious. Like the whole movie, she like wants to make her life better and like turn her life around by like losing weight and like quitting smoking. So like those things like just kind of make her self-conscious. And obviously she puts a lot of her self-worth into what boys or men think about her. And I think hearing that from Mark Darcy like really altered her brain chemistry. And she was like, oh my God, it's possible for someone to like me for who I am and not for like wearing tight clothes or like showing off my cleavage, which is what she did for the other guy. So that was just like very Conrad and belly coated. I definitely enjoyed it. I want to watch the sequel eventually, but I thought it was a good watch. And if you're interested in love triangles, which you probably are since you're here, I would recommend watching it. It was very cute. Also, this is sort of related, but sort of unrelated. One of my favorite YA books is called Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. And I have read all of her books. I'm a big fan. But in that book, the main character has a cat whose name is like Mr. Fitzpervert. And I just was like, why is that her cat's name? That makes no sense. Like, what a random name, and why is the word pervert in it? I was so confused. And it's a character from Bridget Jones' Diary. And now that makes it make way more sense because the whole like premise of that book is that she's obsessed with rom-coms, like old rom-coms that her and her mom would watch together. And so there's a lot of like references, the way that she like dresses or like things that she brings up are a lot of like references to movies that she likes. So totally makes sense that her cat would have that name. Also, it's such a cute book. I reread it this summer. It's so feel good. It's about a girl who like really likes this guy that comes back to her school that she knew from her past, and she works with her neighbor to like scheme a way to get him to like her, and they end up kind of fake dating. And then obviously she like has feelings for both of them. It's really cute. I would highly recommend. Okay, next topic of conversation is communicating with you guys. I have been getting a bunch of messages and emails recently, just like discussing things that I've talked about on the pod, or like if you're rewatching it and you have questions, like I love to discuss with you. So please, please, please send me an email. It's so fun to chat. And something that I have been thinking about and that someone who emailed me sent a note about, I was like, oh my God, thank you for bringing this up because it's been driving me crazy too, is how different Chris Briney looks in season one, like the beginning of season one, honestly, just like all of season one, to like the very last two episodes of season two, like specifically the last two episodes, I think. And I've talked about this with some friends too because I am just like, he looks like a completely different person. Like, I don't know what it is. And I'm so curious if you have noticed this too. Like, what do you think it is? And why does he look like he hasn't slept for months? Like, at the end of season two, I get that he's supposed to be so tired and like drained, but oh my gosh, like they either like nailed it and that was the point, was to make him look like exhausted and like he cannot put up a fight anymore, or they filmed it like 2 months later and he, I don't know, like got a haircut or something. Like, what is the difference? I need everybody to go take a look at that. That's your homework for the week, is take a look at what Chris Briney looks like in season one, compare it to the last two episodes. Like specifically the scene of him like out at the what are they called? Garbage bins talking to Belly. I think he looks really different there. I think that he looks super different also when they're in the motel. And he like is leaning, the exile scene, like that scene, he looks really different, but like obviously he's supposed to be super like out of it there. It's like the worst moment of his life, but let me know what you think is different because that was really bothering me and I'm really glad that it's not just me. Another exciting update in the like industry is that the writer's strike is coming to an end. I think it technically did end, but like they were still working on some negotiations. So I've been chatting with people about when we think like the show will actually resume production, and the actor strike is still going on. So we've seen all of our main characters being out and about, especially with like Fashion Week, Fashion Month. Everybody is like in Europe and they're gallivanting and looking amazing. Lola looks so incredible in all of the looks that she's been wearing recently. But yeah, the actor strike is still going on. But the fact that the writer strike is over, and I saw that they were able to go back to work, I think last Wednesday. So that's a week ago from when I'm recording. That's super exciting that they came to terms with the studios and that they're able to begin working again. And so I've been just like scouring the internet to like see information about like what's going on with the production. And I read on a Reddit post that someone said there were some industry blogs that mentioned that they were planning to resume filming sometime in like June or July. So because of that, I think the writers' strike started when XO Kitty premiered, and I want to say that was in the spring. So maybe they were like finishing up writing or finished writing the show. I don't know how long. If anybody has any insider tips and you want to share with me, let me know. But I don't know how long before production begins the script needs to be finalized. I mean, I'm sure they're like making edits all the time or like tweaks, but I just have a feeling that the script was like pretty much finalized in the spring, if not just like mostly being done. So I think everything else that needs to go into the production, like prop styling, I don't know, like set design, location scouting, like maybe all of that was like being done in tandem with the show being written, as they like were kind of finalizing those details. I really don't know. I'm curious like what the schedule of events is like. So maybe like some of that is done, but my hope is that once they're able to start production, they can just kind of roll right into it, or at least like finish up the rest of the details that need to be finalized and then start with the acting, and getting the actors back on set. So I believe that the Screen Actors Guild, I believe is what it is. I believe they're meeting sometime this week to discuss and negotiate again, but hopefully that will be resolved very soon, and the show can resume filming. Also, we know there's going to be 10 episodes next season. So if they're doing episodic releases, that's 10 weeks of the show airing. That is so long. That's literally, isn't that 2.5 months? Like, that's so long. Especially considering like the first season, we got 7 episodes in one day. Like, that's literally one day of watching versus 10 weeks of, oh my God, I feel like I could hardly handle the way that it aired this week or this year. Although maybe they'll do the thing where they do 3 episodes in one day again and then 7 more weeks. So it's only 8 weeks. That's probably what they'll do. I'm just thinking out loud. But anyways, I did see some posts that also said like if they're doing it episodically, they could potentially have the episodes be like almost done, but like keep editing them as the show is airing, to be able to like push up the release date. So I don't know. I kind of feel like it makes, if they're really sticking with like the summer release time, which they probably are, just because it's like so on brand for them, and the book does take place in the summer. I think it probably would make sense for them to like either try to release it in like August at the earliest next year, or possibly wait until 2025, which would be super sad, and I hope that's not the case. I mean, I would watch the show at any time during the year, and I think most people would too. So hopefully they will keep that in mind and not make us wait until 2025 just so we can watch it in like June, because I would literally watch it at any time. Like drop it on Christmas Day. I'll be watching it. That would be the best gift. Okay, a couple last housekeeping items before we get into book club and the episode. I decided that I'm going to do our new book club episode the last week of October, so that will be the week of the 30th. We'll see if it comes out on the 30th or the 31st. Maybe it will be like a spooky Halloween episode. But we are reading Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. The link to that book is in the show notes, and I would love it if you would join. If you read the book and you have any questions or any topics that you want to discuss, please feel free to send me an email or DM me on Instagram. I've gotten a couple messages from people who have finished the book already, and someone said it was gut-wrenching and like so well written. So I'm super excited. I think I might try to start it this weekend. We'll see if that's possible. Also, I'm trying to post more on the podcast Instagram because I think it's super fun and I just love connecting with you guys over there as well. So if you have Instagram, please make sure to give us a follow. It's at The Summer I Started a Podcast, and the link will be in the show notes as well. I've been posting like episode cards and like things from the episodes, as well as some like news and updates and stories as well. So it's been super fun to be having that account. Also, be sure to subscribe and leave a rating and a review while you're at it, so you don't miss any fun upcoming episodes. So for today's episode, I probably should have said this 15 minutes ago, but we are recapping episode 3, which is called Summer Nights, and also book 1, chapters 13 through 19. And like I said, I love how these like finally had some alignment, and it was just really exciting to like read the book and like compare it to what we actually saw on screen and how it's a little bit different. Also, I've been just taking notes on the show in a Google Doc that I've had, just like a running Google Doc for the entire podcast. And I have officially hit 100 pages of notes. I'm shocked. Like, this could be like a short book at this point. I cannot believe I have written that many things about this show. Oh my gosh. All right, so chapter 13 and 14 kind of go hand in hand together, I think. Chapter 13 was like super short. And it basically started with Laurel asking Belly if Conrad was doing drugs because the moms are like, what is going on with him? Like, they don't understand why he's being so different. And Belly says she knew Conrad wasn't doing drugs and a beer was one thing, but he would never do drugs and she would bet her life on it. It's kind of funny because in the show, Conrad is like very openly smoking pot, and or was he smoking a cigarette? I feel like he was doing both. Maybe I'm wrong. Now I'm second guessing myself. But in the book, he's definitely smoking cigarettes, and Belly told him to stop, I believe. And in the show, same thing. But anyways, that chapter launches Belly into a flashback where she's 13. So this block of chapters was a bunch of like back and forth. So it's flashback, present day, and they had the ages at the flashback. So this flashback specifically was age 13, which is 2 summers ago, because in the current summer she's 15 turning 16. So this one, she's 13 turning 14. And then we also get some flashbacks when she's 14 turning 15. So we get a flashback from 2 summers ago. We also have some from 1 summer ago. But I'll try to keep that straight just so we can remember. But anyways, so we get a flashback of the moms smoking pot and the kids find out that they're doing it. Belly said like it was brave of them to do it because they knew all the kids were home, and usually she thinks if they were doing it before, they would do it when the kids were all gone. And there was a line that I thought was funny when I think one of the kids was like, "What is that smell?" And Belly says, "It's pot," I said loudly. I wanted to be the one who said it first to prove how sophisticated and knowledgeable I was. And it's funny because she's 13 and her brother is like, "Belly, how do you know what pot is?" And like what it smells like. And it's like, okay, that's a fair question. And Conrad says it's my mom's, putting his headphones back on for her chemo. Jeremiah didn't know. I could tell. He didn't say anything, but he looked confused and even hurt. The way he scratched the back of his neck and looked off into space for a minute. Stephen and I exchanged a look. It was awkward. Whenever Susanna's cancer came up, the two of us being outsiders and all, we never knew what to say, so we didn't say anything. We mostly pretended it wasn't happening, the same way Jeremiah did. So we're really getting a sense in this chapter. So this is the summer that Susanna had cancer before it came back in the current summer. But we're getting the sense that like the kids really do not know how to deal with it. And like Conrad's kind of like moody and like keeps to himself. And it seems like Jeremiah is more like shut down. Like he's confused and like, I don't know. I think his personality is one where he probably would want to like be helpful and like engage if possible. But like at this age, he seems like he doesn't even know what to ask or what to say or what to do. And the moms are not really helping in that way either. So then the moms come back downstairs, and there's a couple of interesting quotes that I want to touch on. So this is Belly talking about Susanna. She says, Susanna touched my hair lightly, which I loved. Susanna was much more affectionate than my mother in those kind of ways. And she was always calling me the daughter she never had. She loved sharing me with my mother, and my mother didn't mind. Neither did I. So I think I've said this before, but I feel like Belly just really considers like Susanna and Laurel her like ideal mom. Like there's characteristics from both that she loves and like put together. I think that's like her ideal mom. But she gets things from Susanna that she doesn't get from her mom that she loves. And I think she also maybe doesn't realize it at this age, but like there are things about Laurel that she probably prefers over things that or ways that Susanna would act. And this just really shows us that like the way that Belly thinks about Susanna and sort of has like preferences for her at times. So all the kids are in the living room, like kind of hanging out, doing their own thing. And Belly was reading Emma, I believe. And she said that she was really just like kind of sitting there, like listening to the boys talk and hadn't been reading. But she didn't want Susanna to know that because Susanna gave her the book. And Susanna asked her how the book was, and Belly says, I opened my mouth to lie and tell her how great I thought it was. But before I could, Conrad said very loudly, she hasn't turned a page in over an hour. He was still wearing his headphones. I glared at him, but inside I was thrilled that he had noticed. For once, he had been watching me, but of course he'd notice. Conrad noticed everything. Conrad would notice if the neighbor's dog had more crust in its right eye than its left, or if the pizza delivery guy was driving a different car. It wasn't really a compliment to be noticed by Conrad. It was matter of fact. I'm like obsessed with this passage because I think that that characteristic and those traits really translate over to Conrad in the show as well. And we see it in like little ways that he like notices things, that he remembers things. And I've made a bunch of TikToks about this because I just think that it's an important thing to remember about Conrad. And I really like how Belly says that he notices the most mundane things. And I think here, like, she's kind of saying, you know, she's not special that he would notice her. That's just sort of the way he is. But at the same time, I do think that Conrad pays extra attention to Belly. And I feel like we'll probably see that come up more in the book. But at this point, we're kind of getting a little taste of his memory and like the way that he is. Then later in the book, Belly and Jeremiah are like hanging out outside and they overhear the moms who are also outside talking. And Susanna says, Lore, I hate myself for even thinking this, but I almost think I'd rather die than lose my breast. And Laurel says, I know you don't mean that. And Susanna says, don't tell me what I mean. And Belly says she's never heard her like be so harsh and angry like that. And Laurel like is trying to comfort Susanna, and Belly says she knows that she's like rubbing her back and like trying to make her feel better. And Belly says, I wished I could do that for Jeremiah. I knew it would make him feel better, but I couldn't. Instead, I reached over and grabbed his hand and squeezed it tight. He didn't look at me, but he didn't let go either. And then she says, this was the moment when we became true, real friends. So this chapter I thought was really important to kind of give us like more of a backstory of how Belly and Jeremiah became so close. And it's definitely told to us like throughout the series that they have a super special bond. They like get each other. They have like ESP. And I liked like learning more about like the moment that kind of changed things for them. So after that, they went back to the beach, and Conrad and Steven walked up to them, and Steven like noticed that they were being weird. And Steven says, did you guys just have your first kiss or something? And he kind of starts to like tease them, and then Belly says he started to sing Summer Lovin' had me a blast. Summer Lovin' happened so fast. And that song was sung at Belly's birthday party in this episode. So a little tie in there, which I thought was cute. But then on the beach, like Conrad notices that Jeremiah is just like upset. So he tells Steven to leave both of them alone. And Belly says the two of them, and she's talking about Conrad and Jeremiah, never seemed particularly close, but there were times when I saw how well they understood each other, and this was one of them. Seeing Conrad protective of Jeremiah made me feel this huge surge of love for him. It felt like a wave in my chest washing over me, which then made me feel guilty, because why should I be feeding into a crush when Susanna had cancer? So like I said, this is like 2 summers ago. Belly knows that Susanna has cancer, and I think that this is a good like indication to us, like that she's kind of realizing what the relationship between the brothers is like, but also just like same thing. It's like, okay, it almost feels weird to be talking about Belly's crush when it's such a serious like topic that they're like kind of dealing with. But I think for like Belly's relationship with Jeremiah, she knows that he's hurt and she wants to like comfort him and be a friend to him. Whereas like Conrad doing something and like protecting Jeremiah, she's like, oh my God, like swooning over him. So kind of like juxtaposes how she's feeling about both brothers. And Jeremiah just continues to be like pretty upset about the whole day, basically. She says that he walks away and Belly kind of sticks with him and wants to like continue to provide support for him. And she says, we cemented things between us that summer. He'd wake me up early some mornings and we'd go collect shells or sand crabs or ride our bikes to the ice cream place 3 miles away. When it was just us two, he didn't joke around as much, but he was still Jeremiah. And then she also says, from that summer on, I felt closer to Jeremiah than I did my own brother. Jeremiah was nicer, maybe because he was somebody's little sibling too, or maybe just because he was that kind of person. He was nice to everybody. He had a talent for making people feel comfortable. And I really like this because, again, we're getting more of an idea of like why and how they became such close friends. But I do think that there is something to be said about like the younger siblings kind of bonding just because they like have that in common. And I know she's saying like he's nice to everybody, but again, like it's sort of how like Conrad like remembers and like notices things about everybody. There, I feel like there is like a special something about Belly that both brothers like pay attention to. In the next